Welcome back! Ty and that guy. Yeah, you didn't realize how loud it was till you're in the room with me, huh? For a very special Ty and that guy, we got Ty here in the Dirty South, working with us right now. We are currently doing some Black Mirror episodes. Today we're doing an episode called Demon 79.
We're going to be discussing Black Mirror, Demon 79. We will be doing full spoilers on this episode. If you haven't seen the episode, go watch it before you watch this. You've been warned. We're going to spoil the shit out of it.
And what's cool is you see the poster here. It's got a very shining vibe to it.
It does.
And I think it's the score, the opening score of The Shining, I think, when they do the score in the show.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
I didn't recognize it.
So apparently, I guess, and again, like I said this in the previous episode, but this is something that we're kind of doing differently, whereas I'm a big fan of Black Mirror. It reminds me of The Twilight Zone, which is my favorite show of all time. And Ty and I, we watch all the episodes of Black Mirror. We discuss them. But I haven't yet done a deep dive, meaning I haven't went in and like listened to Charlie Brooker interviews and read and read the scripts and really like thought about things. Because usually if we do a deep dive on something, we fully kind of know the inside. We know all the Easter eggs. We know everything. This is just, I'm a fan of it. And I saw the episode recently and I just want to talk about it. And so those that are listening, if you have deeper insight or deeper knowledge about the episode, find us on Discord or put it in the comments, and we will further the discussion and the conversation about Black Mirror. But today we're talking about Demon 79. You want to set it up for us?
Yeah, this one is the classic deal with the devil story, but of course has a Black Mirror twist to it. But yeah, it's a woman living in England, a woman of Indian heritage, living in England during a period when sort of the right-wing, radical, anti-immigrant bigotry is starting to take off, and there's a lot of there's a political movement that comes across as very sort of neo-Nazi that they're calling like the New Front or something like that. And then there's a politician who's making noises that he's very sympathetic to sort of that anti-immigrant worldview. And so this woman is surrounded by people who clearly don't like her and treat her poorly, with this element of racism and bigotry and all that stuff sort of mixed into it. There's a scene early on which is you'll often hear described as the stinky lunchbox scene, where people will treat somebody who has foreign food in their lunch as if they're doing something distasteful and they should be kicked out. And she winds up getting kicked out of the lunch area because she's got Indian food in her lunch, and some other employee says, "Oh, it stinks and you shouldn't be allowed in here." Which, all of which is stuff that people face in the real world all the time. But in this case, this woman goes downstairs. She winds up finding this little tile, this little bone tile about the size of a domino that has a weird symbol on it. She gets some blood on it. And then what winds up happening is getting blood on this symbol causes a demon to appear. And the demon appears and offers her a deal.
And what's the deal?
The deal is that because she summoned him, she is now required to sacrifice 3 humans within the next 3 days, or the devil will bring about the apocalypse. So she is now required to kill 3 people.
I heard a little bit about that Black Mirror is thinking about doing a spinoff called Red Mirror. And this is a Red Mirror episode where they lean more into horror and supernatural elements of the story, and Charlie Brooker's a fan of that, and I am here for it.
That makes sense, because usually Black Mirror is about humans and technology, and this episode, there's no technology. It's set in 1979, so it's very sort of late 70s, early 80s level of tech. And the main driver of the plot, rather than being a new technological advancement, is magic.
Yeah.
Which you don't see in Black Mirror episodes.
Yes. And thematically, it's set apart from the other Black Mirrors that we discussed for this episode. Usually the episode has a strong thematic through line, or the season has a strong thematic through line. And this one kind of deviates a little bit. It does have that strong morality discussion within the episode.
Well, so this is an episode that Wes and I talked about a lot after we watched it, because I felt like while I really enjoyed the performances and there's a lot to enjoy in this episode, I didn't think this episode was as strong tonally and narratively as they usually are. There's some real weird tonal shifts in it that I found odd. And then the narrative takes a turn toward the end that I don't feel was adequately set up. So it feels like suddenly things are different and without any setup for it, which usually Black Mirror is pretty meticulous in its narrative crafting. So I'm not sure why this one felt so weird to me. And maybe part of it is the supernatural element, which is already weird for a Black Mirror episode. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, I support the Red Mirror 100%. And when Black Mirror has kind of leaned into horror, I've really enjoyed it. Like Heavy Metal is one that I can think off the top of my head. I guess I didn't see the Maisie one yet, but that one's leans into it.
Yeah, Maisie Day has a bit of a... I've watched Maisie Day. Wes hasn't yet, but... has a bit of a horror element to it.
Right.
And again, a supernatural horror rather than technology horror.
Right.
Which is interesting. Although I will say about Maisie Day, there is a technology-driven ethical question at the center of it. So it's kind of has the Black Mirror thing there, where the ethics are technology-driven.
Right.
But yeah, it's so with this one. And the reason Wes and I went up watching this one is because it's the one my wife wanted to watch. My wife is super into like horror. Definitely has a horror bent to it. The episode does not shy away from the brutality of the murders. And in fact, forcing this gentle soul, because when you see her, she's being picked on all the time. People are being like openly hostile and racist right to her face. And she's very passive. She doesn't fight back.
One of the things that this episode does well is I care about her immediately.
Yeah.
I care when she's on her break and the girl comes in there and it's like, hey, you go deal with this guy who's too creepy for me. And she's like, I'm on my break. And she goes, yeah, but if I start, then it'll go into my break. So
my break is more important.
My break's more important. You subvert her and then she goes. So now I'm kind of connected to her. I'm emotionally involved in her story.
And the actor is good. She's good.
And she's great.
She's got this gentleness to her, which I think you're building up to how that's subverted in her imagination.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she has these flashes, these dark Ally McBeal flashes where she has these dark fantasies of murdering people in certain situations, which then you're like, she's a human being. She has emotions like everybody has emotions and everything. Yeah. So at this point, I am on board. The tone, the shining music, the vintage Demon 79 coming on the screen, the setup where I care about the protagonist, I care about what happens to her, and then these cool imaginations of her doing something really dark and violent. And so it's set up very nice, and I'm on board with it. Then and what I really liked about the demon situation, so she finds this thing, she rubs blood on it, the demon appears, at first the demon has he's like talking through the thing, and he's like, hey. But immediately what I find interesting, even when the demon is talking through the domino, and when the demon first appears and realizes, like, oh, I'm sorry, I might be frightening, and goes, immediately you see that the demon has a similar humanity situation that she does, where ultimately he's a demon, and he's, he does have evil side, like he's cool with killing people and stuff like that, but he also cares about her, and so he's complex in his demonality. It's not like he's a demon, like a pure evil. And so there's something really interesting about him and the dynamic they have with each other. One of the things I think works well within this story is it's kind of a love story between them two.
Yeah.
But I do think now at this point I care about them. I think the demon is interesting. I love that actor, the actor that plays him.
Yeah, he's great.
But I really love the actor because he's funny, he's endearing, and then he has you believe, okay, he's getting it done, the whole thing of it within them. We laughed out loud a couple of times.
Oh yeah, he's very funny, and has this sort of breezy charm that feels very odd coming from a demon, and often tries to use charm rather than threats to get her to do the horrible things the demon's trying to get her to do. He tells her the consequence. He says, "Oh yeah, all the humans will die. The apocalypse will come." Then he'll try to charm her into doing the things. Mm-hmm. And he'll say like, "Oh, that he's a bad guy. You'd be doing him a favor if you kill him, or you'd be doing the world a favor." Like when the old woman is there, and he's like, "She's only got a little bit left. They do her a favor taking her out, so she doesn't have to suffer through the end."
Within the story, is he reliable? I don't remember. Like, did he ever? Was he always telling the truth?
He seems to be always telling the truth. Now, the one of the plot moments that I disliked the most is a moment when he is unreliable, but it's not because he's lying or trying to trick her. It's because somehow he doesn't have information that the demon in his position would absolutely have. When she winds up committing a murder, he calls home base, I guess.
Because the murder didn't count.
Well, that's the thing, is he calls 666 on the phone, which I thought was clever. And he calls home base, and they tell him that one of the murders didn't count. And then he tells her a new rule that she didn't know about. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't kill somebody who's taken a life, and he had murdered somebody, so his didn't count.
See,
which I didn't like that.
Yeah, and I think ethically it's kind of inconsistent because she killed the guy that molested his little girl.
Yes.
And that counted, but they're saying once they murdered, but one could argue that molesting a little girl is worse than
way worse than murder.
Way worse than murder.
Yeah.
So that so the inconsistency within that did bump me a little bit.
I didn't like that much. And in fact, if you go to prison for murdering some dudes, the other dudes in prison are fine with you. You go to prison for molesting little girls, you're probably not coming out of jail.
Yes.
Like even murderers in prison know that child molesters are the worst.
Right, but so they do set it up in a way because he's a brand new demon and this is his first test. But the thing is he has this supreme knowledge of everything.
Right.
And then
he can tell you exactly what every person has done.
So the point I'm making is they try to set it up like he's a novice demon and he's still learning the ropes, but he has this supreme knowledge of everything that everybody's done, and she can rely on him that he knows. It's like Ziggy from Quantum Leap.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he's shady on one of the rules of the.
So Wes and I went up talking about this over. I think we talked about it over lunch, and my feeling was I thought they were going to tell a different kind of story. I thought they were building up to a different kind of story, and I thought it was clever. I thought what was happening was that the demon was misleading her to trick her into killing an innocent or killing innocents. Mm-hmm. That knew that killing the brother would lead, the guy who murdered his wife. So when he gets her to murder the guy who killed his wife, and she goes and commits that murder, and then the innocent brother shows up, the one who had never done anything, and she winds up being forced to kill him. I actually thought I thought the demon set that up on purpose. Mm. I thought the demon was trying to get her to murder an innocent, and that's the trick he was using to do it. When I discovered that he actually didn't know, and that somehow he thought that murdering the first guy was going to work, and he finds out that it didn't, that felt very cheap to me. Mm-hmm. I did not like that plot movie.
Yeah. Well, in one thing too, so I'm on board. The way it was set up, I'm on board with her. The whole idea, you and I have...
The performances are great.
Yeah, performance is great. And you and I have a lot of conversations on those ethical dilemmas, like if you can kill Hitler as a baby, would you do those things? And we really have spent whole podcasts talking about that. And so this scenario fascinates me, and I'm interested in it. But when I started looking at this a couple different ways. So she's somebody who's been... there's microaggressions her whole life, somebody that's constantly been marginalized, been talked down to. Yeah. She can't even enjoy her lunch, and it's like putting people off. And she was having these fantasies. And I thought it was setting it up to when she kills the first guy, she starts to get a taste of
now
power.
She's into it.
Yeah, power, and then slowly getting seduced by the murdering these people that have wronged people in a certain way or justified it. And so I was waiting for that or the inverse of like it starts to shatter her or break her down or everything like that. And so
because going from fantasy to reality, that's, like she might fantasize about killing people, and then when she actually does, or there's even the plot that kind of fools you a little bit, where like, no, she's actually going insane, and like maybe something broke her on the inside and she's going insane. So I'm looking for these things, but ultimately when she killed the first person or even the second two people, then she kind of becomes passive. She kind of becomes in, and she's like watching TV, and it's I can't tell how she feels about it one way or the other. She's just avoiding it, And he's like, "Hey, let's get back. We got to finish things." She's like, "Shut up! I'm not talking." Like she's not talking to him. She's not engaging in it, and it just seems like there's so many more interesting choices that are consistent with the character that I got to meet. And that is the tonal inconsistency in this episode that I was talking about at the beginning. That I feel like her character, it never feels like a clear path. It never feels like she starts here and she ends up here, or she starts here and she ends up here. It feels like she's doing this the whole episode.
Yeah.
And as an actor, that's something you look out for in scripts, that there isn't a clear emotional path for the character from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, right?
Yeah.
And I know you've come to us before, like when we were working together on Expanse, you've come to us and said, I don't understand my path through this episode. I don't understand. I'm starting here, but I don't understand why I end up here, right? And we've had those conversations. Well, I know it's something you care about when you read scripts and stories.
Yeah.
And I felt like that happened in this episode.
Yeah.
It just felt like she kind of was here, and then she was here, and then she was here again, and then she was back down here. So I didn't feel like I understood her journey through the story in the way that I should have. And I think the most important thing for me, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to finish this thought. The thing that, in retrospect, as I was sitting at home that night, the thing that bugged me the most is if the ethical dilemma we're dealing with is the trolley problem, which is it okay to kill one person, an innocent person, to save 10 people? Is that okay? And that this episode is the trolley problem. You got to murder 3 innocent people to save everyone. Is that okay? Right? That's an interesting ethical problem. A lot of philosophical studies have been done on that problem. This episode takes the final decision away from her.
Mm-hmm.
She kills 2. She's getting ready to kill the 3rd, and then the end of the story is not driven by her choices. Somebody else takes the choice away from her, and then the end of the story feels like it's just some random thing that happened because it's not her choice. And if you're gonna tackle that problem, if you're gonna tackle the trolley problem, the guy has to be holding the switch at the end that decides which way the trolley goes, right? That has to be the end. And when you say, okay, you're at the switch and you got to decide if one person dies or 10 people die, and then just before the trolley gets there, somebody comes and goes, oh no, I'm going to take you away from the switch. Then what story are we telling?
And what she does with the switch is what you're saying with the story.
Yeah. And
I find that I thought that as she was, because when she killed the guy, I was throwing the crisp at her, which was a great scene.
Yeah.
So she kills the guy,
innocent brother.
The guy. Well, first she killed the guy that murdered his wife.
Yeah, she kills them.
Yeah, and that guy. I mean, oh God, that was like so disgusting. Like his crotch smelled, and like oh God, and it go on the thing, and like how disgusting he was just repulsive.
I will say that now, having visited Wes in his home, in Georgia, I can tell that he is a person who does not like messy, because his house is spotless. It's immaculate, right? And when that guy walked into his house and she followed him into the house,
and the food stains on his couch,
and there were food stains on the couch, and there was trash everywhere. Wes literally did this in his chair. He went, oh, he was going like this. Oh, the whole time. Yeah. So that guy might be the grossest person I've ever seen.
The grossest, most disgusting person. You hate him, but there was an interesting character moment when he's like, he sees her with the hammer, and he's like, "You're gonna hit me with that, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And he like accepted and knew that was coming.
Yeah, and he's like, I've always known that this was gonna happen.
Right.
Like I think he is a man living with guilt.
Yes.
Because the guy at the bartender says he's in here every night, just sits over by himself and drinks.
Mm-hmm.
That is a person who is anesthetizing, right? When you just sit by yourself in a bar and you just drink all night, every night, you're trying to anesthetize something.
Right.
So he's got the guilt, and when she shows up with the hammer, he's like, "This is what's supposed to happen.
Right.
This is how I make up for the terrible crime that I committed."
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so I saw, and then I tuned back in at that point because I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. This is an interesting thing."
That was interesting.
And then she takes his life, and it's like, oh, she's growing with these murders. She's like taking agency over these things and these people that have transgressed her or people around her.
Yeah.
And it grows into her making the choice. There's a politician that is kind of the head of this movement, or kind of
this sort of bigoted sort of like a white pride kind of
white pride thing. And so it reminded us of The Dead Zone, the Stephen King story.
Yeah.
When he shake hands with a politician, he realized how many people that are hurt because of this politician. Yeah. And so then he realized it's time to
makes the decision.
It makes the decision. So I saw her growing with this comfort with murdering. Yeah. It's like, you remember that Hellraiser where the lady starts killing people for her lover? And then
that is Hellraiser.
It is Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And then Hellraiser. And then because at the beginning, and then as she grows and starts killing, it becomes more. And her and her husband are watching boxing, and he's like, "I thought you hate this stuff." She's like, "It doesn't bother me anymore."
Yeah.
So she's like, she evolves into this thing. So then I was like, she's using this new talent that she discovered for good vigilante justice, and she's going to go after this politician. And then I thought the choice would be, when the cop shows up, her choice is, to take this guy out and stop the apocalypse, I got to kill this cop who's a good man.
Who's a good man.
Yeah, and so either I choose not to do that or I choose to do that.
Yeah.
But it was muddled in the way that it was executed, where it was like, could she have killed the cop if she wanted to?
He didn't have a gun.
Yeah, she didn't either.
She had the hammer, though.
Yeah, but
No, but what I'm saying is she was the only person there with a weapon.
Yeah.
She had already beaten and injured the politician. If she had charged over and whacked him with the hammer, I don't think the cop could have stopped.
Okay. Right? Okay. So then there was that choice.
I felt like that was the choice we were being presented with, because we've already seen in the prior scene, she killed a guy she thought was a bad guy,
right,
and winds up having to kill an innocent to cover her crime. And so we're setting up a similar sort of dichotomy where do I kill none of them or do I kill both of them? Right?
Yeah.
That's the situation she's in.
Yeah.
And then to have the decision taken away from her in that moment.
Right. How was it taken away from her?
Because the cop arrests her. So she sort of surrenders to the cop.
Yeah, but she makes the choice not to kill the cop.
I guess.
Yeah, but to me, you convinced me that the choice was there. I didn't see the choice there just by the size discrepancy, her having a hammer, where the guy is in proximity. Like, even if she ran him, the reality is, he could keep that hammer away from himself.
He could probably keep it away from himself, but I don't think he could have stopped her from killing the politician.
Oh, I think so.
So
I think if she turned her, he would tackle her from behind and
maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's not clear. We shouldn't be having this discussion.
Yeah, the clarity should be there.
Yeah.
What it is the story's trying. What feeling is the story trying to make us feel?
Right.
What is the decision? Because she's our main character. We need to understand her decision point, and she gets so passive at the end.
Yeah.
And she just kind of goes along with it.
Right.
And so all this time she's been struggling with her choices, struggling with decisions. She's presented with this final moment, this final decision, and chooses not to make a choice.
Right.
Even if she went for the guy and did get grabbed from behind, I would still appreciate that more because she made a choice in that.
Yeah. And it was building beautifully to a really strong choice, because the guy with the crisp, stolen crisp, and she had to kill him. That wasn't an easy kill.
No.
She had to reach in deep and be resistful, and she's discovering the strength within herself and this talent that she has to kind of persevere. And she murdered this guy. And then I wanted to see the effect that murder had on her that's different than the first murder. She progressed somewhere, because the first murder, and then she kind of went back in that passive, And
that's exactly what I agree with you totally. Exactly what I'm talking about is is it feels like her story is this.
Right.
It's up and down, then up and down, then up and down. There never feels like there is a clear path from where she starts to where she ends. And I in my own writing, I have learned to become very suspicious of characters that are like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm doing something wrong, and I need to find the clear path for them.
Right.
And I'll tell you, in screenwriting, my experience of screenwriting is if you write a character in a script who's like that, the first person you're going to hear from is the actor. It's going to come and go, I don't understand my journey. I don't understand why I start here, and what is my path to the end?
Yeah.
I felt like this story kind of
because the thing is that's how you know who they are by the choices they make.
Yeah.
And if the choices are that they don't point to a certain trajectory, like there's a certain consistency with a character.
Exactly.
And that consistency could surprise you. That consistency is always moving and evolving, like we are always moving and evolving.
I mean, there can be twists.
Yeah, and
there can be surprises.
But the twist, when you look back and realize, like, oh no, that's rooted in logic. It's not unmotivated twist, right? It's like, but I am a massive fan of Black Mirror and Red Mirror. I'm here for it. I am 100% on board. I'm excited about that kind of progression going towards that way. I didn't see, well, we'll talk about it later. And overall, I really enjoyed this episode. There's just things that I wanted more from it.
So it is an episode that has great tone. I mean, not great tone, but great visual style. Mm-hmm. I love the look of it, right?
Yeah.
I love the performances. The two leads, the demon and the main character, both I thought they gave great performances.
Even all the character, even the stinky guy.
The stinky guy.
Yeah.
Her horrible coworker.
The guy that was throwing chips at.
The guy was throwing chips. The horrible coworker is well performed.
Yeah.
All of the
art direction, the style, what people were wearing, the music.
All the pieces are there. I have some issues with the narrative with how the story plays out and some of the.
But one thing that I thought strongly ended and arced really well was the love story between the demon and her. And I felt like there was he was somebody that really didn't belong in his world, and she was somebody who felt like she didn't belong in her world and was made to feel like she didn't belong in his world. And in some ways, they were already kind of in oblivion. They were kind of always like she was kind of existing in a way. Right. And the loneliness of her life was done very well.
That's interesting that you say she was already in oblivion. Mm-hmm. So when he's like, hey, come to oblivion with me and we can hang out.
Yeah.
She's not losing much from her perspective.
She's gaining a companion, gaining a relationship within this thing. And so like them walking away. And I also, did you ever see Did you ever read the book Cabin at the End of the Woods?
I have not.
Okay, so the book is very different from the movie. Did we do this on the podcast?
That's the one they retitled "Knock at the Door" or whatever.
Yeah, Knock at the. M. Night Shyamalan did the movie.
Yeah. I have not seen it.
I really enjoyed the book. I actually enjoyed the movie too, but it's a very similar situation, right? It's the same deal where you have to murder these people or the apocalypse is coming. Right. That's what it is, right? These strangers show up at the cabin.
Don't spoil it for me. I'm going to watch it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm kind of going to explore it.
No.
Because I'm connecting it to this.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying that there is a connection for the people who've seen both.
Well, no, here's what I'll say. The setup is the same.
Yeah.
From Knock at the Cabin in the Woods. And then now I'm only talking about the ending of this. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But one of the things that I really enjoyed is she's confessing, and there's a moment there where you're like, oh shit, is she insane? Does she break under all these things?
Right.
And that this isn't really a demon or whatever? And I liked how it flipped that no, she was the one telling the truth the whole fucking time. Nobody was listening to her. And it's almost like, yeah, fuck you guys, when they're standing out there and all these nuclear weapons are coming. It's like, we fucking told you.
Yeah, I told you.
Yeah, I told you. So it's kind of like a satisfying thing. And then they're walking off into oblivion, which something about being in oblivion with two lost souls, there's something romantic about that. So I think the love story worked really well through that thing.
I'm not as into rom-coms as you.
Thank you guys for hanging out. This was a great conversation. If you have any deeper inside knowledge of this episode, or do you have anything, just put it in the comments or come on Discord, and we will continue the discussion on the podcast.
Joseph will link the Discord down in the thing so you can find it.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.